Introduction to the Pastoral Epistles, and introduction to 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy and Titus. I'd like to welcome you to my channel. My name is Pastor Peter Hawkes, and I'm just going to give a very short introduction to these three books, and then in another video talk about each one. 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus were written not to churches but to individuals, in this case to Timothy and Titus, and they're known as pastoral epistles because they deal with topics that pastors are interested in. They were written by Paul about AD 63, and they're personal letters sent to these two pastors, as I said, of how to take care of churches, how to behave as Christians, and Paul is very personal and direct in these three epistles. Timothy was sent to Ephesus to pastor, look after the church there. The word pastor isn't actually used, but he was to be the leader in Ephesus church where Paul had spent 3 years. And Titus was sent to Crete to look after the churches throughout the island, to appoint elders and to be in charge. So these three books have a lot to teach us about church life, how it should work, and conduct, how to behave, about choosing leaders and church leadership, elders and deacons. And then they also deal with heresy, apostasy in the church, and false doctrines, false teachers coming in. There's teaching about corporate prayer. There's quite a lot about the role of women in the church, whether they can teach, what they should wear. I'll be going into detail a bit later on with that. And the qualifications for choosing elders and deacons. I mentioned heresy, they talk about the great apostasy, 1 Timothy does, and the treatment of widows, bosses and elders. They're quite practical. Paul says to Timothy, the most important, and Titus, the most important thing is godliness. What does he mean by that? Being like God, being holy, being honest, being truthful, being pure sexually, being patient, being kind, being merciful, being just like God is. That's one of the major qualifications of a pastor. He teaches that money, we mustn't go. He teaches about money and being content. And there are instructions for older men, for older ladies, for young women, married women especially, and for young men. Much of the teaching is normative. That means these are apostolic instructions for all time. We're meant to keep these commandments. They're not take it or leave. We haven't had progressive revelation about most of these issues. They're normative. That means they're the Word of God, and we must take them as the Word of God and just do what they say. However, some of the teaching is obviously just within the cultural context of the time and place to which they refer. So, for example, Paul teaches about foot washing, and he teaches about whether women should speak in meetings. But I'm going to go into detail a little bit later on. But really, we need to take the principles of those two things and apply them to our day and age. And so it's quite tricky for people reading these three epistles to find out, well, does that apply for us today or not? Is that normative or not? Or is it just for those times? And a lot of discussion has been had, especially about the role of women in the church. Thank you. So in the next one, I'm going to talk about 1 Timothy.